Welcome to Monologues by Hassie, where I'm going to be dropping unsolicited brain dumps from the depths of my grey matter. I'll talk about life, money, society, and self-development, plus whatever else lies up there, whilst hopefully not getting cancelled in the process. Here's why I quit my six-figure software engineering job. So as I've just mentioned, I've made a huge life change and I've decided to part ways from traditional employment for a period of time. And it looks like I'm going to be out of traditional work for at least 9 months, trying something new. And what I'm leaving is a job where I was earning $125,454.54 per year. Those are Australian dollars plus 11% superannuation as of this financial year. So overall, my total take-home package is somewhere between 138 to 139,000 Australian dollars. And this is a great income for where I live. It's a great income for my age. Globally, of course, anyone in Australia, generally even on our minimum wages, you are making great money. But even in my position, I was definitely earning great money. And I still made the decision to leave. And what I'm leaving behind is a bunch of amazing colleagues who I'm grateful to have worked with, and I know I will run into them in the future in many other places. And I've also learnt so many incredible skills that I will be taking along with me. So in this episode, I want to take you through the reasons why I decided to leave such a great job. And for those of you who've listened to my podcast, you'll have known that I've only been in the technology and software engineering space for the past kind of 2.5 to 3, maybe even 4 years if you include my time in robotic process automation, but I'm relatively new to the industry. So to have even achieved a salary level like this so early, a lot of people might be questioning why I've decided to walk away. And what I'm going to do in this episode is go through the reasons. Now, generally when people make a decision like this, there's 2 sets of reasons. When you're making decisions, you might draw up a pros and cons list. So you'll have the reasons for leaving and you'll have the reasons kind of against leaving, and that's very important as well. But even amongst the reasons to leave, you're going to have 2 categories. You're going to have positive reasons to leave, what are you going towards, and you're going to have negative reasons to leave. And in this episode, I really don't want to touch into why I've decided the bad things, what I'm moving away from, because for me, they're very minimal. And to be honest, that is probably an episode for another day. But today, what I will be going through is what am I trying to go towards? What are the positive reasons for me leaving? What made me look at what I already had, what I was getting from my workplace, and made me think it is time to go because there is a different adventure for you to have. So I think number 1 is impact. So when you're working as a software engineer, I absolutely love the work. It's technical. We get to work with different people across the business. And the interesting thing is we often have to understand what is actually happening. We need to understand the context of the problems we're trying to solve. So definitely in the industry I was in previously, in my previous job, which it's a bit weird to say, it was only a week or so ago that I was still working there. But in my previous job, we had lots of domain and industry knowledge that we had to learn to be able to translate that into code and to solve problems for our internal teams and our customers. But there comes a point where regardless of the mission of the company in software, there are going to be so many things you have to do. For example, I remember the last ticket I was working on was to add a filter button, so a UI filter button, and it was not as simple as it sounds. There was quite a lot of work we had to do in the back end to support that. And it was one of these tickets where even towards the end, I wasn't able to get to the end of it and I had to hand it over to my team lead. But it just demonstrates the type of work where we're putting in a lot of effort and the impact is maybe one of our customers has the ability to filter their data in a particular way. And so whilst collectively everyone is contributing to this great mission, I personally was thinking about what impact am I having, and it was something where I knew that I could have greater impact. For example, this podcast, even though it makes me no money, I actually know that it's having impact on people because I hear from them. And sometimes that's something that money simply can't buy. So I'm definitely trying to move in ways where my work generates greater impact. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, I went from the kind of the data engineering team to the software engineering team. And one of the things I did in making that jump was naturally in software engineering, I started right at the bottom. So you're in a position where you're learning a lot and naturally your impact might not be tremendously high. And there were other ways I had impact in the company. I have always enjoyed communicating and teaching, so I was definitely able to kind of leverage a variety of skills and contribute in different ways. But one of the big reasons that I'm walking away from my job is I want to find out how to have more impact. And that is not something I know the answer to, but it is something I want to work on for the next 9 months that I have completely blocked out of traditional employment. So I've said, I'm not going to work a normal job for this period of time, but I'm going to go on this journey of exploration. The second thing is leverage, and you'll hear me talk about leverage a lot throughout my podcast, and there's many different types of leverage. We have leverage over money, we have knowledge that can contribute to our leverage, we have skills, which is applied knowledge, and all of these things are really important. And if, again, just as I was describing, within the confines of that business, I was a very low leverage employee. Now, of course, I was paid very well. I was well remunerated, but I didn't have much leverage in terms of where the company was doing, what we were doing. I, at the end of the day, was the person who kind of took tasks and then went and implemented them. If I did have an opinion, I would have to voice that very delicately. You would almost have to politic to get something done, even if you believed it was for the best interests of the company. So I was a very low leverage person in that line of work, but then outside of that, if I'm looking at something like financial leverage, the thing about being an employee, and I don't say this in a bad way because the kind of default state for me when I come back from this 9 months is I will re-enter the workforce. But when you're an employee, you generally do have the safety of your monthly wages. So, I received my last paycheck this week, and it's this dopamine hit that you get every week. And I think Nicholas Nassim Taleb has this quote saying there are 3 great addictions: heroin, carbohydrates, and a monthly salary. And that is completely true, especially about that last one. Because as an employee, we have so much comfort knowing that our salary is going to be coming every month or week or bi-weekly, whenever it comes. But we aren't exposed to upside potential. So I did have a very small number of options in the business I was working in, but I'm somebody who calculates the probabilities on things, and in the best case scenario, if the company sells at multiple XYZ, how much am I going to make? And at the end of the day, I realized that those options weren't actually worth that much to me. In like a best case scenario, I might have walked away with $20, $30, $40, $50,000 if I vested the whole lot. And that wasn't really enough to justify me staying there. So that was another reason that I left. And the reason you're given options, and typically you won't be told too much about them, is it is an incentive for you to stay at the company. And for me, I did the math. I thought about what are the incentives for the people who are running the company, who have more leverage, more influence over the direction it's taking. Are they interested in getting to the same multiples that I would need to see to earn money off my options? And at the end of the day, for anyone in the startup scene, if you are given options, it's just a lottery ticket. You shouldn't weigh these too much into your compensation. And in my case, I effectively have ignored them. That's why I don't talk about them too much. My salary is kind of what I can trust because I can use that to go buy shares in more established companies and own part of the economic pie that way. So the options I get are effectively lottery tickets, and for anyone in the startup scene, I think this is very common. You will see this attitude, and it's a good attitude to have, is treat your options, treat your equity as a lottery ticket in best case scenario. And for me, given the potential I had to change the company, because again, I did essentially take, even though I got a pay bump to become a software engineer, I became the most junior person in that team. And despite having spent a lot of time at the company, I had very little impact in the decisions the company was making, the direction the company was going in. I was just somebody there to do a job. So I didn't even have too much personal impact over the value of those options. So it just wasn't something that I factored into my own decision to stay. And when I'm talking about leverage being a reason to leave, it's because I realized that there are so many other ways that I can create leverage. And for one of those is, I think, generating intellectual property and owning that. Because at the end of the day, if I own my own intellectual property and have products and digital services, scalable digital services, which I can offer to other people, then that is a far more leveraged opportunity than simply going into work. So for the next 9 months, I kind of want to run these experiments to leverage. To be honest, to be fair, this podcast is actually a form of leverage. It is a form of leverage I really like, because if I look at last week, I think 32 people listened to my podcast. Not 32 people, but I had 32 downloads of my podcast. So I was able to speak to a number of people 32 times without ever having had a face-to-face conversation. So this podcast allows me to leverage my time and to share my experience, and hopefully something that somebody else finds helpful in a way that doesn't cost me any more, and that is a form of leverage. I now want to build that type of leverage in other areas of my life. So another reason for leaving is, I guess, my skills and my learning journey. And when I was brand new to both data engineering and brand new to software engineering, of course, when you're new to something, that is when it is easiest to learn. And for example, this is where you're new, you're learning something, and you're rapidly growing. And after a year, I was really happy with my progress. And in fact, a lot of my team members said, when I did submit my resignation, I was told a lot of the time, you're not what we'd expect from somebody who's been doing this for such a short period of time. We're surprised at how far you've come, and we're really happy for you. And I think people definitely did acknowledge that I put a lot of work into developing my skills, and I increased my skill level at a very dramatic pace. And the reason I had to do this is there wasn't other junior engineers, there weren't other mid-level engineers. I literally worked in a team of exclusively senior engineers, so I felt like I had a lot of pressure to work in a way where I could still contribute to what they were doing, and I wasn't somebody who was always dragging them down, which is a really valuable experience that I'm grateful for. But even after a year, if I looked at the rate I was learning, it was definitely slowing down. I think I was definitely getting more into the vibe of being in the team and doing the delivery, and if I looked at my kind of growth in my skills, it was definitely not plateauing. Plateauing's the wrong word, but it had taken a dramatic kind of fall. And that's absolutely okay. It's to be expected. But I was definitely itching to increase my skill level. And if I factored in how much time I was spending at work, and whilst I say I was well compensated, by no means was an easy job. It can be demanding from time to time. I definitely didn't feel like my skill level was increasing at the rate I wanted it to increase at. And so I realized that for me to increase my skills, I'm going to have to do this outside of the context of this company. So that was a very important decision for me, because the skills I want to develop aren't solely in corporate software engineering. There are other forms of engineering I want to dabble in, and there are other skills outside of engineering that I want to dedicate time to. And when you're working a full-time job that's taking 40, 50, sometimes even 60 or more hours a week, depending on the week, you don't have the time to invest in those skills. So for me, I said, learning is super important. I definitely want to be learning as much as I can. And I think there are going to be opportunities outside where I'm working now to go and pursue these learning opportunities. So skills was a big thing. And then the fourth thing I thought about was my time horizon for making money. So of course, having this job is an incredible thing, and I was making great money. And of course, if I stayed longer, there would have been heaps of great opportunities, both at the company and in other companies looking for engineers who have that kind of enterprise software engineering experience. But then I had to look at financially, and even in terms of skills as well, what time horizon did I care about? Do I care about how much I learn in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, or do I care about how much I learn and earn in the next 10 years? And by expanding my time horizon, I realized that I was actually at the point where I was more comfortable with saying that, you know what, I'm happy to make less money now, but I believe that what I'm going to embark on, I'm going to pay the naivety tax. I'm going to test out a bunch of stupid theories. I'm going to pay a learning tax that I need to pay so I can maximize my gains in the next 10 to 15 years. And that's a very different time horizon, because there's a huge part of me that says, you know what, Hassi, you should stay in this job. It's a great job. You're going to keep learning. You're going to learn from these amazing people, and you're going to become this really distinguished engineer who's going to be capable of solving different problems in this domain area, and you're going to learn all these great skills. But I knew that this is going to come at as I mentioned, the cost of learning at a slower rate. Again, natural. Once you pass the beginner levels, that's going to happen. But also, if I thought about just taking that kind of safe option and staying in my job forever, then am I necessarily picking the safe option? Am I going to have this kind of wild success in 10 to 15 years? Or am I just going to be slightly above average? And for me, I said, you know what, take the punt, take the time off, explore a few other different things, because even if you do make less money as a result of this decision in the over the next year, and that's definitely the likely scenario, I very sincerely believe that over the next 10 to 15 years that this will do so much good for me, and it is going to have a disproportionate payoff, even if that payoff isn't financially and it's just purely because I got the life experience. Which brings me to my next point, which is time being finite and phases of life. So I'm 29 years old, I'm approaching 30, I've got this family who is constantly kind of grandparents and everybody, uncles and aunties, everyone's pushing me to get married and to settle down and to do all these things. Yet I feel like my life is only just starting to begin as a 29-year-old male. And what I realize is I can take these risks at any point in my life, but the cost of taking those risks is going to be different. And what I mean is, right now I don't have a spouse, I don't have a family. It is very easy for me to walk away because I don't have any dependents to provide for. I can literally reduce my burn rate to a very small amount of money and try out these different experiments, try out these different income models, maybe learn skills that I wouldn't have had time to learn. I can invest in that now. That to do that when I have a spouse and when I have children is going to be a very different ballgame. It can still be done. And I think if you're listening to this and you do have, you've got a husband or you've got a wife and you've got kids and you've got responsibilities, you can do everything I'm describing. So one of the things I will be doing over the next 9 months is I will be a digital nomad working around the world, and you can still do that with your family. It's just going to look a bit different. Maybe you're going to be enrolling your kids into a local school and you're going to be staying in each city for a much longer period of time to give them a bit of stability. But it's going to look a bit different. And what I realize is I'm at the phase now where my window on doing something with very little money is rapidly closing. So it is the time for me to take the risk now, because it's just going to get harder to do as I get older and as I take on more worldly commitments, such as a spouse and children. So it's definitely the right time. And a big one that I've talked about is in software engineering, there are really two kind of, if I was going to generalize it, there are kind of two sides to the coin. There is enterprise software engineering, where you're working for a company, could be a startup, could be a mega corporation, and there are many shades of gray amongst that. But with software engineering, you've got this software engineering, as I was describing when I was talking about impact, that many software engineers work on very small parts of a very big system. Sometimes you see people go an entire 20 years and they're incredible engineers and they're great at what they do, but they're not the type of people who have had the experience of being responsible for the whole product lifecycle. Because if you're at a big company, you have product managers, you have project managers, you have designers, and you have all these other people helping you. In some companies, you even have software testers to kind of do all the software testing work. And when you're a developer at these very large corporations, you get very used to working on very small parts of the problem, where sometimes, depending on the kind of nature and organization of your company, sometimes those problems are so well defined for you. You get this beautifully written ticket, which pretty much tells you exactly what you have to do. And that's a really valuable experience. And as I said, there's a lot for me to learn in that world because I've barely scratched the surface. But from working as a software engineer for the past almost year and a half, and as a data engineer for a year before that, one thing I've learned is that whilst there is a whole world for me to learn in the world of enterprise software engineering and enterprise technology in general, one of the things that I have seen is there is another side to software engineering, and you'll hear this term, you might have heard of this term. It is called the indie hacker or the indie developer. And these are developers who take responsibility for the whole product lifecycle, and they build and maintain these products with generally one engineer. It's just themselves. Maybe they'll get another person on down the track, but they experiment with delivering services as a single developer. So it's a very different side of software engineering, and I realized that if I don't go and try this out, it's going to be not harder to get that experience, because I think all of the software engineers I described who are in the enterprise world, 100% could do the indie hacker thing, and they will be amazing at it. but it is not about whether you can do it, it's about whether you do it. And I think the reason a lot of people don't go down the indie hacker path is there's less stability. If you do have commitments, you don't have the steady paycheck. It's inherently more risky. But I said, hey, go try it out. And maybe you're going to make no money and you'll make a couple of junk products that no one's going to use and they're complete crap. But a big part of me says that the reward isn't whether I make money. It's the fact that can I prove that I can make a product and serve it to the world? Even if there's no one uses it and I'm the only user, the fact that there's something that I've built that is out there is going to be very important. So I want to experience the world of software engineering outside of the enterprise, outside of the corporate environment, without the bureaucracy and red tape that's involved in the way that we do software engineering at big companies. And I want to experience the cowboy/cowgirl side of the software engineering world, because I fundamentally think that no matter how it goes, even if I do come back into a job, as I said, which is the likely outcome when I finish this 9-month experiment, I believe it will make me a better enterprise software engineer. Just knowing the whole life cycle, it will make me better working with every person in the enterprise environment, from the product managers to the project managers to the designers. The fact that I've at least dabbled in what they do and delivered end-to-end products will mean that no matter where I go, it will be something that's very beneficial to me. And then the big thing that I haven't spoken about yet, the other reason I'm quitting, is naturally my health. And so one thing I've done very well is I'm very laser focused on things like development. So for the last 2 years, more than 2 years actually, even when I was working at the government, I, outside of work, have always been learning as many skills as possible. And that has put a lot of demands on the way I've structured my lifestyle. And it has definitely led me to making some suboptimal health choices. And I've gotten to the point where when I look at the next 10 years, outside of money and leverage and all of the things I've just spoken about for the last 20 minutes, if I look at where my health is going to be, if I keep going into work and living the kind of engineering lifestyle I was living, which was kind of do a lot of work and maybe not eat the healthiest and maybe not exercise the most, I said, imagine if you spent a year and you invested just 10 hours a week into exercise and another 4 hours a week into making sure you eat healthy. And if you did this for a year, what impact would that have on the rest of your life? So for me, another big reason of leaving is I saw the gains that I can get from improving my health are going to be so disproportionate that it is going to be worth whatever money I'm leaving on the table by walking away from my 6-figure engineering job. Because I realized that I can change my health in a way that it will lead to me being more productive, happier, and efficient at everything else I do, including aspects of my life like work and relationships outside of that. So I really want to invest in my health. I'm talking about physical health. I'm talking about mental health. I'm about to go on a Vipassana retreat next week. I'm doing my second one. So I'm very excited to be doing another 10-day retreat. I feel like I need it. Having worked in the startup environment where every 3 months has felt like a very long period of time because of how much we were achieving at work and how much I was achieving outside of work. As I said, I give my weekends up to studying and learning. I feel like I really need that kind of 10-day detox to focus on my mind, to focus on my meditation. And I've been investing more in my physical health, just making it a daily habit. So I realized that changing these health habits and improving these health habits will pay dividends going into the future in a way that money simply can't buy. Fundamentally, the very last thing is we always talk about time. People talk about exchanging time for money, which is what working a job is. But people have to realize that that is not a one-way relationship. We do not solely have to exchange time for money. We can also exchange money for time. And some people might look at what I'm doing over the next 9 months and say that's irresponsible. He's going to be losing out so much money. The banks aren't going to approve him for a mortgage when he comes back because he won't have the work history. But what I've realized that I personally need to do in my circumstances is take some of the money I've saved up and take a punt on myself and really buy my time back. So I can invest in skills which aren't related to work. So I can invest in my health. So I can run these side projects and experiments and actually have the energy to do them. Because that is going to lead, in my opinion, to much better outcomes across the time horizon that I want to achieve these outcomes in. I'm not just looking at how can I be successful in the next 2 to 3 years. I'm looking at how can I be successful in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And Across that time horizon, making a decision to leave my six-figure job that's paying me almost $140,000 as a total package, it's almost like it's common sense for me to make that decision to leave my job. And at the end of the day, no matter how this decision goes out, let's say I travel the world and try to code things and absolutely nothing works out, in the very worst case scenario, I will have had a very long holiday. I will have taken a hit in terms of earnings for 1 year. If I look at myself in 10 years, and this is one of the thought experiments I did, I said, in 10 years' time, Hassie, when you're 40 years old, there's going to be two versions of you. One person who just worked the regular job and gradually progressed through the career kind of the way that my parents would expect me to do. And there's the version of me that has become successful to a level that I can't currently conceive of now in my current phase in life. If I look at these two versions of myself, would both of them have any regrets about not taking a year off work to go and improve my health and to explore some different side projects and invest some time in some different skills and travel the world? Both of those people would say we're glad we made that decision, right? Doesn't matter whether I go down the kind of steady traditional career path or if I achieve success in some sort of way that I can't even describe to you now. Both of those future versions of me would want me to do what I'm doing now. And ultimately, those are the multitudes of reasons why I've decided to quit my six-figure software engineering job. So I'll leave it there. And with that, I wish everyone listening to this great success on all your endeavors. You've just made it through another episode of Monologues by Hassie. It brings me great pleasure to know that you made it to the end. To listen to more episodes, subscribe on your favorite podcast app or visit monologuesbyhassie.com. Thanks for swinging by.